You wait for about 2 years, Kevin, and then you get 2 episodes of Screamadelica / Screamacelica. In 1 week, we're back. I'm Paul John Dykes. You're Kevin Graham. And this is Be Here Now. Kevin Graham. Is this the most you've listened to Oasis in some time this week, do you think?
Yes. Well, today more than that. I mean, I didn't listen to What's the Story Morning Glory yesterday because...
Was that muscle memory?
That's muscle memory. That's burned like a stamp that you would get in a prisoner of war camp on my back.
Was it that bad?
Like that. But Be Here Now is slightly different for me. And it was interesting because you were talking about the B-sides, and truthfully, I couldn't tell you what the B-sides to the Be Here Now singles were. I was like, I haven't got a clue what they are. Mm-hmm. But then when I started looking into it, I went, I remember now, apart from one. And I went, I'm not too sure if I've ever heard that before, that song called Flashbacks with an X at the end of the A. And I'm going, I've either completely forgot that song existed or I have never heard that.
Right. I mean... I was still, at that time, buying everything that Oasis released, even the imports at HMV. You know, if they released like they did on this, a standalone single perhaps in America, Don't Go Away was released in America, I would get the import at HMV and it would be an astronomical price, even though there wasn't any new B-sides on it. So I was familiar with the B-sides, but I've got to admit, other than probably the two that I'm going to select to replace 2 of the album tracks, I hadn't really listened to them in a while. So going back on that was interesting. Listening to the album, I thought was pretty interesting. And before we came live, I said to you, you're going to write off half of this album like you did with Morning Glory yesterday. And your answer is? No. Right.
No, definitely. Maybe not.
Well, let's have a look, right? Because we're travelling back in your time machine, as you used to do, Kev, back to the 21st of August, 1997. And let's try and understand the furore around the release of this album. We're talking tabloid paparazzi breaking into the photo shoot for the front cover. Remember that? And then it appears as a double-page spread in newspapers prior to the album coming out. They were so desperate for a wee snippet of information, a glimpse into what the third album was going to be like. There was I can't remember what channel it was on, but there was a documentary about the album on the Sunday night before the album came out. You remember that?
I think it was the BBC because I recently saw it for the first time.
Right.
I didn't see it at the actual time it came out, but it was on the BBC. They had an Oasis night towards the end of last year, and that was the first time I'd seen that documentary.
And see, well, I'm going to say lucky you because I was caught up in the moment of that. So obviously, I'm looking at the newspapers. I'm trying to figure out what the third album cover is going to look like. I'm watching that documentary, and I've got to say, I think the versions of the songs have aged really, really well that they played in the documentary. So they played "Stand By Me," and this was by Bonehead's swimming pool. So they're in Bonehead's back garden. And it's the acoustic version. So Noel's playing the acoustic and Liam's singing Stand By Me. And then I think they play 2 songs and Liam's wearing the all brown gear, hat, jacket. You remember that? And they sing It's Getting Better, Man, and Be Here Now. Right?
I think that version of Stand By Me is used on some advert for some building society or something like that. Is it?
You're right.
Acoustic version?
You're absolutely spot on. But that at that time, I'm watching that, and one of the things that stood out for me was that they took a drive around Manchester, and they're driving past Mr. Sifter's records, which is still there. Badly Drawn Boy was tweeting about it.
He was there a couple of weeks ago, I noticed that.
And by the way, I bet you the old fella, whose name I don't know, Mr. Sifter, I bet the old fella doesn't sell merch with Mr. Sifters on it, like T-shirts and mugs. I bet he doesn't do that.
No, that's what Badly Bon Joy. That's what the guy for the Oasis podcast says about him. He says he just gets folk coming to the show because they're doing like the tour of Manchester, and it's a big Oasis thing. He says he could make a fortune, and he just goes, "You need to buy a record."
Because Badly Drawn Boy took a picture of the old sign that looks as though it's never been replaced. And then a poly bag that the old fella puts the records in. So they're driving past all these different things. And I remember No pointing out Mr. Sifters, and then they pointed out the site of what was the McVitie's factory that the Peggy worked in. And Liam says about Mr. Sifters, yeah, we used to go in there, you used to get the Wolf Tones records out of there, right? And I remember, like, the following week, you know, people saying, right, that's it, I'm boycotting Oasis records because they were Rangers fans, right? But simply because Liam and Noel said that they were buying Wolf Tones records back in the day from Mr. Sifters, and I found that rather funny and as petty as you would expect, Kev.
Aye, it is quite fun. I mean, I think Noel's been extremely open about when they used to go on holidays in Ireland that he was subjected to Irish, some folks say with Irish folk songs, some folk would call them Irish rebel songs, other folk would just call them folk ballads, the same as Flower of Scotland and stuff like that. And I think he was quite open that the fact that they got everybody singing was very like educational for a young songwriter.
Didn't you say that his ballads, he actually said that they were basically influenced or inspired by some of the old Irish folk songs that he would hear, because his old fella was a DJ running about Manchester, and he would go into the Irish bars and a lot of these songs would be played. I don't mean DJ as in Chemical Brothers and mixing and scratching. He would play records in a pub, basically. But he would go and play...
He's basically playing like the Barleycorn
yes.
LP.
And he's playing like Pass Me Down My Bible by the Dubliners and stuff like that. Aye. But I think the quote goes along the lines of the Punch in the Air anthems, the terrace anthems. He says a lot of that was down to him being brought up with the folk music or the rebel music of the times, which obviously he was exposed to the Wolf Tones as well.
We've spoken about this before, and you look at Manchester and the amount of Irish Mancunians that are creative, and not say it's because of the background and when they grew up in abject poverty in the 70s. In Manchester, there was a working men's clubs, and it was a sing songs, and it was a storytelling and all of that, and it brought the creativity. And we've spoken about this many a times, how there's so many with a Celtic state of mind. I've got that creative state of mind as well, and it's the same. It's just that it's a diaspora thing, I think. It really
definitely is. Well, you imagine being in a scenario where you are in a land that is not your own, and then the community of the Irish diaspora come together either to eat, because that's a very communal thing that people do, and perhaps have a drink and perhaps get the guitar out and the banjo and play some songs. And that community aspect, I think, is huge when you think about the stories and the songs from Ireland. You look at some of the incredible writers, both musicians and authors, who came from Ireland. And Bonehead, in actual fact, spoke about that in the interview that I did with him all those years ago in your neck of the woods, Kev. You weren't at that gig that Bonehead rocked up at Bannockburn to play a gig with one of his bands.
I was not, no.
And I went armed with a Philips camcorder because I didn't have a dictaphone. And I interviewed him, and he spoke about that. He spoke about the fact that it goes right back to the kind of Irish roots that he's got, and Johnny Marr has, and Manny, and Morrissey, and Noel Gallagher, and it goes on and on and on. So that's a wee bit of background to the lead up to this album. It was huge. I mean, people were queuing up. I went and bought my copy on the day of release from Our Price, which is a long gone, almost forgotten record shop from back in the day, isn't it? Our Price. And that's where I got mine. People were queuing up overnight, Kevin, to buy this album. And there's some cracking footage, actually, on YouTube of Pete Doherty being interviewed in a queue. Remember, MTV interviewed him.
Being a sort of extra for Blackadder. What he's actually saying.
What ages do you think? Like 14, 15?
14, 15, aye.
And he comes away with that town crier.
It's that sort of ye old English nonsense that he tried to. Good old Albion.
That's right. I mean, he was a fanzine writer and all that back in the day, wasn't he, Docherty? There's another one that with Irish blood as well. And people queuing up to buy an album. Kev, you will need to explain to your son and daughter why people would do that. But that was a sign of the times, wasn't it?
It was the sign of the times, yeah. I must admit, I never done it. But it was just...
Did you buy this, by the way, at the time? Did you buy it?
No.
Was it another one that you just heard because everybody was playing it?
Well, we'll probably get to this, but the circle I was in when Be Here Now came out, I remember when Do You Know What I Mean was first played on Steve Lamacq on Radio 1. Then you taped it. That's what you used to do. You taped it and you listened to it again and again and again. And by the time the album came out, the crowd I was running about with, we were listening to like Urban Hymns was on the way then. A lot of them were big Radiohead fans. The Primal Scream had released Vanishing Point.
My favourite Primal Scream album.
Spiritualized had released Ladies and Gentlemen were floating in space. So we had sort of the Low Fidelity All Stars were then kicking about. So
How to dismantle what was it? How to dismantle an atomic bomb?
No, that was a U2 album, was it not?
So it was how to operate with a blown mind.
Mind, that's it. Aye. So the lo-fi's in that, and it was still a big deal, but it wasn't like what's the story. It wasn't like wherever you heard it every so often, but there was a lot more. I mean, I think by that point, I wasn't really into the hype. I still loved them as a band, but I wasn't getting as caught up with them as what I was, because by that point you're getting to the turgid end of what they classed as Britpop. Mm-hmm. War had released The Great Escape, which is an absolutely horrible album. You had all these bands that were all kicking about, like I'm not even going to name them, but they were like Oasis copycats, and everybody was looking the same. Everybody was doing that. After Cass' first album, they released a second album, which is a bit dodgy and that, and everything's just sort of petering out. Then you hear Kowalski by the Primal Scream, you're like, oh wow, what's that? That's no Stand By Me. Well, what in devil is that? You hear Radiohead, you hear Bittersweet Symphony, and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? So even though this was a massive album, I don't think it made the cultural impact of What's the Story Morning Glory did. I think it made What's the Story Morning Glory is one of the zeitgeist albums, whereas this one was, you're a bit younger than me, so you were maybe still catching up, and I think it's a younger generation Oasis album, and I'm only talking about maybe 3 or 4 years. Because I was 19 when What's the Story Morning Glory came out. By the time you get to this, I'm 21, 22, and I've sort of moved on a bit. And I didn't get this album until years and years later. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even think I bought it. I think it was my wife's.
Is that right?
I
was still, like you say, I was still all in. And when you put it on, when I listen back to it now, I can see its flaws, but sometimes when you're all in with a band, Kev, it's difficult to see the flaws because you overlook them because you just love the band so much. But now I can look at it or I can listen to it with a fresh kind of perspective. You mentioned The Great Escape there, and I was thinking to myself, what songs did I like on The Great Escape? So I'm looking at it at the moment, and I still love Charmless Man. I think that's superb. The Universal was a fantastic song.
You've got the Universal. This Charmless Man, I think they had done that sort of formula better before.
Wasn't that the one that really annoyed Ronnie Cray? Didn't Ronnie Cray get like a threat issued on Damon Albarn from prison because he was name checked in that song? And I quite like Stereotypes. I'm going to have to listen back to it. Listen, we'll do the Blood one at another date. We'll do the Blood one another time. But we will run through the track by track. People queuing up to get in. Yeah, we will have to explain that to our kids. And you know, I always go back to, you know, if someone had shown you in 6 years at the high school, Kev, an iPhone and what it could do, you would have thought that they were coming back from 2,000 years in the future. But now everybody can just get their music, and we do it as well, even though we know a different way. This album for me listening back to it and reading the old interviews around that time, and particularly the retrospective interviews of Noel Gallagher, was definitely rock and roll, cocaine, excess. This was really supernova heights. This was written over a 5-week period when Noel Gallagher was on holiday in Ibiza with Johnny Depp and Kate Moss. I mean, and it shows now when you listen back to it. I mean, Johnny Depp ends up on the bloody thing. That TV special, I'm going to have to watch that back, but I'm sure there's a moment where they're in a pub playing pool, and it just so happens, and it may have been set up, Manny walks into the pub.
Aye, that's right.
And they're all going, Manny, how's it going? And that. And he was like, I was at a gig last night. And they were like, who was it? Manson. And he says, they were shite. He just comes out with it. So I don't know if that was set up, but it gives you the sense that they were back to their working class roots and they were drinking and boozers. Noel hates this album and Liam loves it. This was the last Oasis LP that was exclusively written by Noel. So it's dividing opinion between the brothers, Kev. And I'm going to ask you straight off the bat, I say that, we're 15 minutes in. Are you in Noel's camp? Are you in Liam's camp? Do you hate it? Do you love it? Or are you somewhere in between?
I'm in Liam's camp.
You love it?
I'm defo in Liam's camp here. I think Noel hates it is because his little London friends, cocaine sniffing friends, and the little sued journals who think they're intellectuals, the guys that he wants to keep in with, slagged the album at the time. So I think that he's just went along with it. Mm-hmm. And he can't go back now, eh?
I remember the reviews. The reviews were good. Q gave it 5 stars.
Aye, but then it sort of turned quite quick, eh?
It did.
It really sort of turned quite quick, and I think Noel's just went along with the party line instead of listening to it. Pun.
Yeah.
Instead of just listening to it and going, by the way, that sounds the way it was meant to sound. It sounds like us in that period. Aye. If you went to see them live on that Be Here Now tour, they were a force. They were an absolute force on that tour, eh? And it sounded exactly the way it had to be. It sounds exactly the way it was meant to sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if somebody says, "What did Oasis sound like?" You could play anything off Be Here Now and go, "That was the way that they sounded."
Aye, definitely. We'll do the track by track as we did last night. But where are we in the world of Celtic? It's pre-season basically. 97-98 is upon us, and we have to stop the 10. Kev, so this is going to be a fair old discussion. Celtic, at that point, were they a spent force? Tommy Burns failed to deliver the title. I truly believed that he was going to deliver the title. We spoke about some of the players in Tommy's team who were right into the kind of Oasis, Britpop style, music, culture, and Jackie and Sid. They were still at the club when Vim Janssen took over. Vim turns up for his first day of training wearing a Celtic shell suit and a perm, and at that time he was completely written off by the Scottish press. The more things change, the more they stay the same, Kev, right? Mm-hmm. What was your thoughts at that point in relation to Celtic's chances of stopping the 10?
I think you've got to put this into relation. When we spoke last night about the hope in 1995 that we had. Everything was great, music was great, politics was becoming great, Celtic were playing great football, we expected everything to be absolutely fantastic that season, eh? I haven't read the message, but I noticed Sambas were mentioned, and I could be into that,
I might have to buy my dad a pair, because I've told the story numerous times that he did lose an Adidas Samba in the crowd after Frank McGarvey, the late great Frank McGarvey, scored the winner against Dundee United in 1985. Can you imagine the disbelief of both his 4 children, who were kids at the time, and his wife when he comes home from Glasgow wearing one gutty? We're not quite sure where that went, but you've seen the pictures back then, Kev, the poor, guys that used to have to sweep the terraces, and it was like just a pile of tins, skips, fully tins. How many Sambas were in that? My dad certainly was. But yeah, it looks like it's a dark green pair of Adidas Sambas.
Aye. Oh, I like them. I'll need to have a look at them.
I preferred Gazelles, I've got to say.
The older I get, Gazelle soles didn't suit me anymore.
You've got something against white soul, sorry Kev, but it's the white soul you don't like, eh? All the trendy managers and coaches that have got the white soles on their trainers.
No, I can go on a 20-minute rant about these shoes, and I'm
I
not
know.
either with shoes or trainers. You didn't wear a bismash. You didn't try to bolt two of them together. It's like a Frankenstein monster of a shoe or a trainer or whatever you want to call it.
Footwear.
1995 is we're all at hope. By the time we get to 1997, it's a come down. We're absolutely got the fear that they're going to get 10.
Mm-hmm.
And the music that's coming out reflects that vanishing point. Ladies and gentlemen, we're
It's a bit darker, isn't it?
Floating in space. Urban Hymns. It's a dark album. It's got a lot of dark thing with Radiohead, OK Computer. Everything's turned by this point, and all the hope that we've actually got that we had in 1995 at this point in 1997 is utter desperation.
I'm liking this. I am liking this
because we are not in a very good place.
It's the come down. It is the come down. I like that. I mean, I'm now looking at some of the other albums that came out. I'm just going to name check some of them, Kev. You've named the big ones, I think. If you look at the NME end of year list, NME was my Bible at the time. I'm not sure if you'd given up on it by this stage. Oasis Be Here Now got to number 25. Look at some of the albums. So you've already mentioned Spiritualized, Radiohead, The Verve, Primal Scream, Super Furry Animals with Radiator, a fantastic Creation Records album. Corner Shop, When I Was Born for the 7th Time, brilliant. Mogwai released Mogwai Young Team, Teenage Fan Club, Songs from Northern Britain. This is on the same year. Supergrass, In It for the Money. I was a big fan of that album. Dig Your Own Hole by the Chemical Brothers. Blur with Blur, Beetlebum and all that. I was into that. The Charlatans Telling Stories.
Was that 97? I thought that was 98.
That wasn't as dark as some of the others you've mentioned, actually. I thought Telling Stories was a phenomenal album. And at that time, by the way, if you buy like the deluxe version of these records that came out back then, you get all the B-sides. And the Charlatans B-sides were up there as well, by the way, Kev, around about that time.
Firestarter was that year as well,
The Prodigy released The Fat of the Land, which, like, I think that was a 15 million selling album. Firestarter was Smack My Bitch up on that as well. Breathe was on it.
I mean, you look at that. You've went for Noel and Auburn and Liam all clean cutting out of that to a guy dressed as a horror clown sitting with a crocodile in a London underground.
That's right. with that kind of Stars and Stripes jersey that he had on as well. Black Grape, Stupid. That was a come down from It's Great When You're Straight. So I like this. Aye, this is working. Mick Head actually released The Magical World of the Strands this year, by the way, which needs to get a mention. What an album that is. Travis with Good Feeling. By the way, listen, Travis had their moment. We spoke about them earlier, JP and I. We've also got Grandaddy Under the Western Freeway and Ronnie Sizen Represent New Forums. What did that win? Did that win the Mercury that year? Drum and bass album.
Won the Mercury, aye.
Yeah, so you also had Portishead with Portishead. I'm trying to see if anything else stands out there. What a superb year. By the way, Finlay Quaid, Maverick or Strike. I'll not have anybody saying a bad word about that album. That was tremendous, that album. Manson, Attack of the Grey Lantern. I liked it. Manny didn't. And you've also got things like Foo Fighters came out with The Colour and the Shape. What a year. And we've said this before. You're never going to get a year like that again, Kev.
No, definitely no. I think it's kind of easy when you rhyme off that list of albums. It's very easy to see why Be Here Now maybe wasn't such an important moment for me as Definitely Maybe or even What's the Story, Morning Glory, because at that point, if you were a music head, there was plenty of stuff there that you were getting into, and I think it was just maybe not even the music press moving on. The music press weren't really interested in Oasis by this point. They were tabloid fodder, so the music press were kind of moving on, and like, I mean, you like that, eh? What the Primal Scream doing an imaginary soundtrack to a 1971 film that nobody's ever seen?
Did you go on to watch the film though? Vanishing Point. Of course you did.
Everybody goes. So you're like, wow. And I was a big Spiritualized Spacemen 3 fan, and like, him releasing what is, I think his last album's up there, right? Ladies and Gentlemen, They're Floating in Space, right enough. And you're going, it was just so... I saw the Primals live quite a few times. I saw Spiritualized live quite a few times. So Be Here Now wasn't a big album at this point for me. But I think when I look back on it now, and maybe as a benefit of hindsight, I like the come down thing with is like there. Everything's turned. Blair's got into power. They're gone for 10 in a row. Looks like Blair's going to turn to shite. The music's getting darker. Everything's just sort of going all peak tongue at this point. So it was like, it was I've said this before, but it was a season I didn't really enjoy. Because
in what way? Just because of the magnitude?
Of the pressure. Aye. Yep. Mm-hmm. Because of the pressure. I've said, like, again, this is jumping ahead to when we won it, but I was home in my bed for 9 o'clock. I was knackered. I was physically and emotionally done. I just, like, was relieved. It was more a relief more than anything. And when you go back to this point in August, you're appointing a manager. You're going, who's this? Mm-hmm. What do you mean? This is the most important season that I've faced in my lifetime supporting Celtic so far, and you're like taking a big gamble on a guy that we've never heard of.
Which, you know, that was the disrespect shown to Vim Janssen by the Scottish media was astonishing, because at that point they could easily have contacted some of their counterparts. And we now know that it wasn't an unknown. We now know because, I mean, again, you've got to realise this kind of information wasn't at your fingertips. Older Celtic heads may or may not have remembered them from the Feyenoord side in 1970, but obviously played in 2 World Cup finals. He won the European Cup, first Dutch team ever to do that. And he was an absolute legendary figure over there, Kev, but he was vilified before Celtic had kicked the ball in his name. He knew from his time in Dutch football that there was a clause in Henrik Larsson's contract at Feyenoord. He knew that. And that bit of information, that bit of intelligence was absolutely critical in bringing Henrik to Celtic. And the thing with that as well is Henrik was never valued at 650 grand. It was due to the clause in the contract that we were able to get him for that. And in actual fact, when you go back to the press at the time, Feyenoord were trying to take Celtic to court to get more money. Can you remember that? For Henrik Larsson. And that rumbled on for a while. And what did I know about Henrik at the time? I remembered him from, would it have been USA 94, Sweden, dreadlocks. And I remember that. Yeah, I remember it.
The third place playoff.
With that brilliant Sweden jersey.
Aye. That's exactly when we were going to say, well, I ken that boy. I mean, I'd only ever seen him once. But it was like, I know him, again, when you look, that's a bit of luck. Lucky man. We could actually say we've had a lot of lucky managers over the years, Mr. Beale. And you have a look at Davy Hay as well in the background.
Yeah.
Getting Lambert, Burley, bringing new guys in as well. I mean, huge. That's massive. I mean, it's absolutely massive bringing new guys in, and Henrik Reaper. What Reaper, man? I would have loved to have seen Reaper on a Martin O'Neill's team. It was
arthritis of the toe that finished his. We've obviously spoken to a lot of these guys over the period, mainly on Acsom, but during a few live events as well. And almost the instant bond that they had, Kev, was a huge part of that. But that only came to fruition after Tosh McKinley headbutted Henrik Larsson at training, according to a lot of the players. I spoke to Tom Boyd about it recently. Simon Donnelly ended up with Larsson's blood on his training kit. He was one of the closest to the incident. And there was a frustration brewing in amongst a lot of and it's been spoken about amongst a lot of the Scottish boys and the Scandinavians. And there was a wee bit of a separation. And in a strange twist of fate, that incident almost like cleared the decks, Kev. Then Tommy Johnson became the social convener, and the team and the bond was kind of built from there, which I find absolutely astonishing. We were preparing for the first game, the first derby of the season against Rangers when that happened.
But then you can actually say it was obviously built on sand, because by the time Weghorst comes in, the dressing room's an absolute bitch fest.
Split again.
It's
Divided.
split again. And then by the time you get to John Barnes,
It's completely gone.
It's a steamy.
He never lost the dressing room because he never had it. And he speaks about that as well. So you've got all that going on in the background. This is the season where Princess Di was in an accident. They do that in inverted commas. She was in an accident in the tunnel in Paris, because I do remember that that was the reason why our game against Rangers was postponed. Can you remember that? And then the first derby came a wee bit later in the season, and Tosh McKinley prepared for that by headbutting Henrik.
I'm sure we arranged that.
Breaking his nose.
I'm sure we arranged that, for that game to get postponed.
I thought, no. I'm sure there's a conspiracist, out there somewhere.
Saying Celtic arranged that to get
that
game postponed.
What I love, and I think the first person that spoke about it was maybe Davy Hay himself, Kev. He had an old school filing cabinet for the players that he was scouting, players of interest. And it was revealed that Craig Burley and Paul Lambert were put in there by Tommy Burns. They were already players of interest in the time of Tommy. And obviously we signed them under Vim Janssen. But if there was ever a legacy of that great Tommy Burns side, perhaps it was they two guys as well that, they didn't come to the club under Tommy's stewardship, but he certainly identified them as two potential signings. They did come along. If you imagine, Craig Burley, we signed him for what, $2.5 million from Chelsea at the time. Paul Lambert, we signed him from the Champions League winners, Borussia Dortmund, for about £2 million. Two brilliant bits of business. And if you watch back the Jackie McNamara interview we did recently, and I spoke about Johnny Gould, he said that when they heard that Gould was signing for Celtic, he thought it was Stalybridge Celtic. And he got tore right in about Gouldy as well. It's the season he smelled the glove. We won the double. Fantastic. It turned out absolutely superb at the end of it. And Paddy Lavery, sorry, I'm going to answer Paddy. Will we be doing a pre-match show for the Legends game on Saturday? No, we won't be. But that's something we might have done. However, tomorrow night, I am on stage in Glasgow with Alan McGee, who obviously signed Oasis, who we're talking about tonight. And on Saturday, we're at Gracie's with Peter Grant, who stepped in for his old teammate, Danny McGrain. So Peter Grant at Gracie's. Unfortunately, I won't be streaming live on Saturday, but what I will be doing is I'll put out a pre-recorded interview that I did with Hunter and McMustard, who just so happened to be talking about Kevin Graham. So you'll need to tune in, because I'm pretty sure you shared the bill with them.
I have shared a bill with Hunter and McMustard, yes.
Yeah. So Hunter went away and bought your book.
Yes,
did you know that? Yeah.
Yes.
He bought your book and they were bigging you up and all that kind of stuff. So that is going to be on our interview, which is going to air on Saturday.
Nice.
And it's now time for us, Kev, at the end of the show, so get yourself thinking about this. I'm going to ask you to drop 2 album tracks from Be Here Now, and I'm going to ask you to replace the 2 album tracks with 2 B-sides. I'm going to ask you what the best lyric from the album is. I'm going to ask you to put a quid in the Acsom jukebox and pick 3 songs from the album. All right? The album as it stands, not the album as it would look once you've made your changes. So start thinking about that if you haven't done so already, mate. And let's have a wee chat about it then. Do you know what I mean? Came into conversation last night. At that time, it was the longest running song that had ever appeared on an Oasis album. By the time you'd listened to the entirety of Be Here Now, it wasn't, because there was one that was longer on it. It was what Paul Weller described as Noel Gallagher coasting it. Do you know what he meant by that, do you think? Do you think it was it bloated? Or do you think it was a great opener to what was to come?
Compare it to Hello. Compare it.
Better song than Hello. Yep.
It's a magic way to open an album, an absolutely big way to open an album, a way that an Oasis album should open, like Rock and Roll Star.
Yeah, it was epic. It was big.
Paul Weller's probably just jealous that he never wrote it. It's just like, they've got helicopters, you've got loads of guitars, you've got things fleeing off left, right, and centre, but it's
a big video as well. It's a big expensive video, a big song. Liam looks great, and I think the B-sides, by the way, Stay Young, Angel Child, and Heroes. So you're looking at the B-sides as well and thinking, wow, he's on form here.
Come on, Stay Young. If Paul Weller wants to have a go at saying Noel's getting lazy, then Stay Young's got it. He can write that sort of stuff in his sleep.
He didn't even want that included in the master plan, Kev. He didn't want Stay Young on the master plan album, and it was the record company that pushed for it because he didn't think it was all that incredible.
I'm on that.
Stay Young
on that.
All right, so that might not be one of the B-sides that makes it onto your revisited Be Here Now album. What about Angel Child then? Listening back to, did you get a chance to listen back to that one?
I listened back to that again, and it's a cracking song, an absolutely fantastic.
Just a demo as well.
Aye, and you're going, why is that a demo? Why did they no look into that? Why did they not try to expand that? Why did they not try to beef that up a bit? Then when you actually hear the album, you go, maybe it wouldn't have fitted in him because of the stuff on the album. And it's a fantastic song, and you're going, that's just been thrown away as a B-side as well. And then you start thinking forward to Standing on the Shoulders. You go, Jesus, no, you've got 5 songs here that you gave away as B-sides. There's one of them an untitled demo, which is better than anything apart from Go Let It Out on Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. I'm going, what did it still untitled when you released Be Here Now as like the remastered Be Here Now? It's still got untitled demo. It's a fantastic song.
Lying on a disc behind his couch. So do you know what I mean? It was the comeback single, massive video, #1 in the UK. You listen back to it, does it stand up?
Yes.
It does, 100%.
Without a shadow of a doubt, it stands up.
Do you like the reworking of it? We spoke about it last night. I
love the reworking of it, but as I says 15 minutes ago, the album sounds the way the album was meant to sound. That's how it's meant to sound, and people have got to make a peace with that. And with this album, I had an old car and I had a CD player in the car, and I go up to definitely maybe levels of listening to this for 6 months solid, driving to work, because I had the CD in the car, and that was maybe about 2010. I don't actually know. Time's just a man-made construct anyway that we were all slaves by. But I listened to this every day on my way to my work and coming back from my work for about 6 months. And it was at least 10 years after it had been released. And I'm going, wow. Utterly wow. And I was like you, I believe the hype, I believe that it's not very good. And I made up my own mind, But hands down, do you know what I mean? Absolutely stands the test of time.
No, I like that. By the way, welcome our very own Laura Bradburn. There we go. Oasis, one group whose music I can finally agree with you on, because Laura likes a bit of the Boyzone and Westlife and all that kind of stuff, Kev, and she's not ashamed to admit it. Saw them at Hampden in 2005, I think. I'm trying to remember the gig I saw Oasis playing, and the support bands were Doves and Happy Mondays, Kev.
Murrayfield.
Was that Murrayfield?
2001 or 2. It was the Standing on the Shoulders of Giants tour.
Yep. Yeah, that would make sense. That would make sense, because at that point, what you're trying to do is go to every tour at some point. And at that stage, were they a big bloated kind of... I still just got caught up in it, to be honest with you.
The Mondays were fantastic that night.
Remember Doves? Doves, Jimmy
Mondays
Goodwin pointed out the Irish tricolour and he called it a Celtic flag, remember? You remember that?
James Lafferty said it's Murray if it was 2000.
2000, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Hoops Boy, not got a patch on Stand By Me by Ben E. King. Right, I'm not going to argue with that. That is probably in the top 3 songs in my lifetime, Ben E. King's Stand By Me. But I do love John Lennon's version of it as well, though, Kev.
Yes.
Aye. Superb. It's raw. And Scott Howe comes in, Stand By Me and Don't Look Back in Anger. It gave me my best memories of my youth. Kevin was just talking about memories of Oasis there. Paul Cook, Ding Ding Boys, round 2. Evening, Paul and Kevin. Good evening to you, Paul. And hopefully Kevin and I, maybe not every single week, but just when we have the opportunity, we can jump back on and do the Screamacelica. And let's work our way through Oasis's back catalogue, Kev. And we might even do the solo stuff as well, preparing us for the reformation of the group. Patrick Harold, Cast had a song that suited the Rangers, Walk Away, I'm sure it was called. Sorry, lads, had to bring that up. Second song, My Big Mouth. Kev, by the way, by the end of this, you'll realise that I do like this album. I am fond of this album. But listening back to it, My Big Mouth doesn't do it for me. I think there's so many. In fact, I'm going to say it. This is one of the songs I remove. Or is it? No, it's no. There's a couple of worse songs. I'm not a fan of this song. I don't think it stands up. I think it kind of plods on, and I'm not sure it was after the Be Here Now tour. I don't think it got much airings from Oasis after that. It was kind of dropped.
They played it at Nebworth. That was one of the 2 songs for this album that they played at Nebworth. They played My Big Mouth and It's Getting Better, Man. I think, if I remember correctly. No, it's as stodgy as A Week Old Soup. It doesn't work. It's the production doesn't work. The whole sort of like pacey it doesn't work. The lyrics didn't work.
It's one of the ones you can't sing along. Listen, not every song. Kevin and I have mentioned some LPs there. I mean, Mogwai, you don't sing along to Mogwai. You know, you don't always sing along to Spiritualized. But you were looking for maybe an anthem. You were looking for something, and it wasn't even a good rock song, Kev. You know, I think it gets dropped. But there was 2 other songs that were worse.
One of them where Noel's trying to cram in too many syllables in a sentence. Like it's very mouthy, it's very wordy for an Oasis song. I feel anyway.
The Smiths came from that background too. Yeah, they certainly did, Robert. That was going back to our initial discussion there about the Irish roots. Song number 3, right? See if you look at the first two Oasis albums, you've got Live Forever and Wonderwall. Right, that's your song 3. They're doing no bad when it comes to song 3s, right? If you're into numberology. Magic Pie, sorry. Just crumple it up, throw it in the bucket. It's over 7 minutes long. It's one of my least favourite Oasis songs in the entire back catalogue. So I think this album starts off really well with Do You Know What I Mean? And then it comes right down to My Big Mouth and Magic Pie, and I'm thinking, no, it's plodding along at that stage, Kev. Not a fan of Magic Pie.
I love Magic Pie.
Oh my goodness.
I love Magic Pie.
It's getting dropped. It's getting dropped to the album for me.
The reason being, it's so overblown and so ludicrous, it shouldn't work. It's just on that right side of the fine line between genius and madness. And there's a bit in it where no, remember I says last night, sometimes influences it comes over like he was putting on a pair of jack boots. And this is my influence, like Magic Pie. You can hear the influence in that, but it's done well, I think. But it's just ludicrous. It's an absolute ludicrous 7-minute song, third one into the album. It shouldn't work, but I was singing along to it the day when I was re-listening to it. It's an absolutely cracking song.
I was praying for it to stop. That's what it's all about, Kev. I mean, listen, we both agree. We're both in Liam's camp when it comes to this album. I think it is a good Oasis album. It was the final album because obviously the Master Plan being a compilation of the 90s. Everything changed after the 1990s Oasis. It's completely different. The lineup changed, the logo changed, the artwork changed, everything changed. This is the last Noel written album. After this, other people started.
This is the last Oasis album for me.
Right. Well, listen, mate, we'll go through them all and we can have our say. Again, I know that you sometimes, Kev, don't really get turned on by the obvious. Like a song that you were talking yesterday, a song like Wonderwall, you think it's overplayed, it's so typically Oasis. And you might dislike it as a result of that. That's not criticism. That's just sometimes how you listen to music.
It's just me being a contrarian bastard.
No, but contrarian for the sake of it can be annoying, but contrarian contrarian because it's what you think, it's fine. You know, it's absolutely fine. But I don't know. I'm leading up to this, and you might completely blow me out the water. I love Stand By Me. I'm not sure you will.
I love Stand By Me.
Great.
Absolutely love it. That. I've done it on karaoke. That's how much I love it. I've done Stand By Me on karaoke.
I've never sang karaoke in my life, mate.
My two karaoke numbers are Shang Along by the Bay City Rollers and Stand By Me by Oasis.
Right.
Oh, I've got 3 Rocks by the Primal Scream.
Right.
That's my 3.
Have you done it sober, or was this a drunken thing? Or
I've never done it sober.
You've never done it sober?
Never done it sober.
Okay. What are your karaoke tunes? Let us know in the comments section. Stand By Me. Love it. I'm delighted you love it as well.
It's a fantastic song. Absolutely brilliant song. Ruined by a rubbish video. That video is just pants about a bike crash or something like that. But the song itself, it's up there with one of the best things that I've ever done. It is Stand By Me, and it stood the test of time.
Yeah, I'm an absolutely massive fan of the song. It's still sang by Liam in his solo shows. It was released as a single with the B-sides as follows, and this is where it does get interesting here. I Got the Fever, My Sister Lover, come back to that, and Going Nowhere. Obviously, My Sister Lover does have that link to King Tut's, because one of the bands on the bill were the Sister Lovers,
who Alan McGee's girlfriend was actually in. Debbie. Yes.
Right. I don't know if you want to share your conspiracy with us, Kev, about King Tut's.
No. I'll keep it for annoying Alan tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night. Okay. Solid B-sides again. Great single. And I'm looking at that point, I'm thinking, right, okay, so you started off well with Do You Know What I Mean? I think it dipped. You don't. You like Magic Pie. Back on track with Stand By Me. I'm thinking, brilliant. That's like a classic Oasis tune. It's a bit stop-start, a wee bit like Celtic's league campaign this season, Kev, if I'm going to relate it back into the world of Celtic, because that was a season that I felt it was almost as if it was pass the parcel, Celtic and Rangers, that Hearts did okay up to maybe November, December time. They ended up third in the league. But you know, if there was ever going to be a team that came through and actually overtook Celtic and Rangers, this was the season, because Celtic and Rangers during this campaign didn't seem to want to win the title. Every time there was an opportunity to get a wee space in between them, a wee bit of breathing space, they faltered, they drew, they got beat.
It seemed to be a title that nobody wanted to win. That's what it seemed to be at times, And so it was a bit stop-start. I don't think it was a vintage Celtic season. It's fondly remembered. Rightly, it's fondly remembered. But I don't think it was a vintage Celtic team or a vintage Celtic style performance. I think even the players admit that. Janssen was a very pragmatic manager. Like, he'd tell Jackie, you can't go across the halfway line, and that's how Jackie ended up moving into the midfield and becoming more a rounded player. You've got Henrik, and we ground out a lot of games that season. But then you've got to remember, at one point, I remember we went to Pataudry round about Christmas time. Was it Boxing Day? Was it Boxing Day? We won with a Craig Burley penalty. And I remember
that popped up recently on one of the guys that does the videos on Twitter, Little Z maybe.
I remember leaving Pataudry singing "We're Going to Win the Lot." So we were extremely confident at that point, of doing it, But as you say, we dropped some strange points. So did them. They dropped strange points as well. And when you look back on it, especially I think because we've had reason to look back on it quite a lot recently. We bend it like Rat Pack.
25 years, okay.
25 years. Like stuff we bend it like Brat Pack as well. I remember sitting watching Bend It Like Brat Pack at Webster's and going, Jesus Christ, look how many points we dropped that season. Because Jim has the scores up. And you're like, wow, that is horrible.
So
some of the games were absolutely horrible.
I think we started off well with, do you know what I mean? Then we started dropping points with My Big Mouth and Magic Pie. And then we get back on the track with Stand By Me, and I'm just wondering what happens next. But you're right, absolutely. It was a bad start. We all know the bad start. We know the games, European game, Hibs, Dunfermline, Henrik Larsson, Chick Chanley, we know the story. And I always find it interesting that in the European game, Henrik Larsson scores an OG, which means that his first and his last European goals at Celtic Park were both against Celtic, because he obviously went on to play and score for Barcelona. A couple of interesting points coming through. CJ, welcome back. There he is, Keith Flint, with that jersey. CJ queued up to buy this album the day it was released. On my lunch break in second year, I've never been so excited for an album. Superb. Did you buy it on CD though, CJ? Because if you were then going to go back to the school, you must have had a CD MIDI player, so you'd have been doing all right at that point. Or was it on cassette? Because you might have just had a wee Walkman and you could have listened to it. Ewan Boy Martin, here we go. I'm going to have to bring this up because I love a bit of nostalgia. Any of you watch the TV show Stookie? Yes, I loved it. And just remember, he always wore a Celtic top. Yes, he did. And he went on to make a number of movies. I can't remember the guy's name, actually, but he was in a lot of films, actually. He was in, what do you call that film? Braveheart. He was in Braveheart, that fella, the guy that wore a Celtic strip. Yeah. And Patrick Harold, Stookie, the tune sticks out. I'm playing it in my mind. I can actually... Stookie, always ready to take a chance. That one, you remember it? He would be drinking like a glass bottle of Iron Brew, wearing a Celtic shirt. Right, so we're dropping points on the next song or not. I'm going to ask you your take on this because it almost led you up with Stand By Me, and you basically agreed with me. I Hope I Think I Know. What was your thoughts on that?
I love it. I think it's a fantastic song. And what I'm going to say is, like, if you probably would have asked me in 1997, I mean, the only 2 albums I rushed out to buy, or 3 albums I rushed out to buy in 97 are Urban Hymns, Ladies and Gentlemen, and Vanishing Point. So, but when you look at I Hope I Think I Know, it's a great tune, man. It's what you want for an Oasis tune. It's better than the B-sides, that what the Fever and the other B-sides that have been made, apart from Going Nowhere. Going Nowhere is a fantastic B-side.
Yes.
I absolutely, utterly brilliant B-side. But I like I Hope I Think I Know as well.
Right. I remember Noel appeared on TFI Friday, which was not mentioned yesterday. Neither was Trainspotting. There were massive parts of the culture around about that time. We were talking about lad culture, loaded, New Labour. And these were big things as well. TFI Friday was unmissable at that time. Anybody who was into music at that point could watch TFI Friday, and you would be watching Ocean Colour Scene and Cast, Supergrass, Blur, Oasis. They were on. I remember U2 were on it one week. I Hope I Think I Know. I remember that they filmed it in Chris Evans's house in London. Can you remember that episode, right?
Aye.
And they filmed Noel Gallagher walking down the street, because it used to be filmed live until Sean Ryder changed that. And Noel Gallagher walks into Chris Evans's house, and he is like a godlike genius at this point. He can do no wrong. And Chris Evans starts asking him about the new Oasis album, and he mentions a couple of song titles, and one of them that he mentions is I Hope I Think I Know, and he also mentions My Big Mouth. And at that time, Kev, this is the first time you have heard these song titles. You know, Noel is revealing it live on a Friday night TV show on Channel 4. So it was with some anticipation that I put this song on at the time. I think it's a classic Liam Gallagher vocal. Listening back to it, it's absolutely sensational. And I'd go as far to say this is the most underrated track on the album. So I totally agree with you, Kev. And listening back to it, I think it's underplayed.
Definitely.
I never hear anybody playing it. I don't know, has Liam played it live since he's gone solo and got back on track? I don't know. I think it's a great song. This is one of the biggest surprises for me listening back to the album, was this track. Although we then drop points again with the next couple, in my view, and I'm looking forward to hearing your view. The Girl with the Dirty Shirt, I'm sorry, I'm putting it in the same bracket as My Big Mouth and Magic Pie. It just plods on. It's just rotten.
That's a bit of a throwaway, it's again, lyrically it's not the best, and I ken you didn't listen to Oasis for the lyrics, but lyrically it's like he's trying to be a bit pretentious and a bit Morrissey-like, and the girl in the dirty shirt, blah blah blah, and a bit like airy-fairy romantic, and it just doesn't really come off with the production and the type of song it is.
And it plods. Keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. Now, you said that you are happy the way it is. You wouldn't change it. There was this kind of reimagining of, do you know what I mean? I'm going to go and totally disagree with you and say that I wish Fading Out was reworked. I think there are elements in this song that could have made it a classic. But listening back to it, another 7-minute bloated effort, but there are elements in there, Kev. It could have been an absolute classic. You're smiling because you're going to say you think it's brilliant or something, right? Johnny Depp's on the slide guitar, probably supping mega pints and snorting mega lines in the studio, and I think that comes across.
No. No, I'm not having that. I think you're making too much of the fact that some of these songs are long, man. I think there's loads of elements in
no, I love I Am the Resurrection, mate. I don't mind a long song. It's just when it plods, it doesn't go anywhere. It just repeats itself, keeps going.
I must admit there is a couple of songs when you go, why are you repeating that chorus again? Just cut that out and
just get on with it.
Just get on with it, and understand where you're coming from. But when you listen to Fade In, Fade Out, it's like how Bon Jovi should have sounded. It's like,
is he playing it with a Budweiser bottle on his finger? You know what I mean? That slide guitar. I don't like it.
Again, it's a thing with the time. It's got my favourite lyric on the album, and I can't. It's the one about there's a devil by the high chair. Mm-hmm. There's a devil looking in that. There's a devil next to the high. The devil contains the high chair contains a devil. I'm going to need to check that up before I come back. I
hope it's not your favourite lyric, because I'm going to ask you to quote it at the end of the show.
I'll need to find it out then.
Is that your favourite lyric of the album?
I can't remember it. It's went straight out of my head.
I'll pull it up.
No, I'll have to actually do it. If you're only getting it marks off because of the timing, I think.
Nah, it just plods on, mate. And I think it's bloated. I think it's one of the cocaine songs that, you know, they're in the studio with Johnny Depp and you've got supermodels prancing about and there's Class A's getting snorted and all that. And I think that comes across in the song. And Fade Now, I'm going to put it in a category of two. I'm going to put it in a category two of songs that most Oasis fans, I think, like and say are highlights of the respective albums that they're on. The other one is Gas Panic, and I don't get either of the two. I'm not a big fan of either of the two of these songs, but Oasis fans generally disagree with me on that.
I quite like Gas Panic, but what's the one before it or the one after it on the album?
Was it no? Where Did It All Go Wrong?
Aye, I think that's a better song.
Yeah, aye. It probably is. I'm looking at these lyrics to try and dig out a wee hole near the end of it. Right, I've got them up. There we go. And then at that point where you think that we're throwing away the title again, we come back strong near the end of the album, in my view anyway. We Don't Go Away, which was a US single. Now, listen, we could go down a wee rabbit hole with this one, Kev, because this is a song that was a complete rip-off of a song by the Real People, whose influence can be heard all over Definitely Maybe. They were the Liverpudlian band who had a studio in Liverpool, who recorded the first demo that Oasis with Noel Gallagher in it, which was called Live Demonstration, I think. And it became a demo tape that eventually, it got them a record deal. They did hand it to McGee at Touch that night. And this is the tape that had the Union Jack like going down the plug hole. The swirly Union Jack going down the plug hole. But listen back to a song called Feel the Pain by the Real People. I don't know if you've done this, by the way. Feel the Pain by the it is the chorus is note for note, word for word, ripped off, to the point where the Real People actually raised legal action against Noel Gallagher, and eventually they took an out-of-court settlement because the legal battle was rolling on and on and on. By this point, Noel is a multi-millionaire and he can pay for his legal team. The Real People couldn't really keep it going, and they took an out-of-court settlement. But it is a rip-off. However, all that said, Kev, fantastic moment on the album for me.
It's a classic Oasis moment, even though it is completely ripped off. But the Real People were a fantastic band. If you've never actually listened to the Real People, I say go and listen to them, especially the album that was delayed. What was it? Marshmallow Lane. If that would have came out, they would have been one of the biggest bands of the early 90s. And it was only a stroke of unluckiness that meant that album didn't come out, and they got in tow with Noel, because Noel wouldn't have got anywhere near them if that album would have came out when it was due to come out. I've always says that. It's a great song. It's got the sort of punch the air, sentimental lyrics that Noel does really, really well. Like he just,
ballad.
He does it really well. You're probably right. There's probably like one extra chorus and one extra verse in there that can actually get chopped off. But it must have.
Are you moaning about the lengthy songs, Kev?
No, I love it. But there is, even listen to it from. I'm sure there's producers out there that listen. I go, oh, they'll cut that. Would have cut that? I would have condensed that. Would have told Noel to do one, because that's no working, But that's not the way they were at that point, And it's a 5-minute song, a 5-minute ballad, which is brilliant. I
love it. Listening back to it, I still love it. And he was worried at that time. There was a health scare, I think, from Peggy, and he wrote that song as a result of that. But at that time, though, I'm looking at the album and the structure of the album. I think to myself, I love it. Totally love Don't Go Away. But now the album needs to up the tempo a wee bit. I'm going to bring in this comment from CJ. Blur started getting scary good when they brought out Beetlebum, Coffee and TV, etc. I'm a big Blur fan. I think Kev is as well. And we will cover some of their LPs on this particular show. Jay for the YY, if you don't follow him on Twitter, I would suggest that you do. Some of his CCTV footage is astonishing. Here we go.
TikToks, man.
that seriously is brilliant. I mean, the guy with the Hoover and all that, brilliant. Right, the reviews were great. The album killed Britpop as it couldn't go anywhere else. And the album was called Be Here Now. The song Be Here Now then comes up. And I remember listening to this, and I'm sure this was one of the songs they played in that special that was on the telly, Kev, the night before the album came out. And I loved the lyric. It's not my favourite one on the album, by the way, but I love the lyric, your shit jokes remind me of Diggsy's, because it's a nod back to Diggsy's Dinner, which you quite rightly said appeared as Diggsy's Diner on some of the releases. And I just think at this point, we needed that kind of up-tempo track, and we got it with Be Here Now. And again, I do like it. So I think we're ending the album, just like Celtic ended the season, strongly.
It's a Stonesian riff which breaks halfway through into Columbia, because you've got the same come on and yeah, yes, giving away the song structure. It was almost as if Liam got bored and he went, nobody will remember I've done these yeah, yes and come ons on Columbia. And he does them. Again, it's just a throwaway boogie, ain't it? It's just a feel-good Oasis song, eh?
It is feel-good.
It is, and it's what they were good at. They were never the Beatles, eh? That comparison, they were a decent rock and roll band, in the same kind of spirit as the Sex Pistols were a rock and roll band, the same spirit as Slade were a rock and roll band, the same spirit that the Rolling Stones were a rock and roll band. They weren't groundbreaking like the Beatles. They were just magic and a lineage of good British rock bands, English rock bands. And this album proves it. I think this album utterly actually proves it.
I'm not.
I mean, if they released this album at Morning Glory stage,
Yeah,
it wouldn't have crossed over. Because it has they got a Wonderwall on it. It has they got a Don't Look Back in Anger on it. But I think this album's more honest.
is the Wonderwall and Don't Look Back in Anger, is Be Here Now's versions, if you like, of those songs? Maybe not Don't Go Away and Stand By Me.
To Joe Public, aye.
Same kind of vibe.
The same kind of vibe, but they didn't have that crossover appeal.
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't appeal to folk who watch Top Gear, which you need to appeal to. Have like,
Don't you watch Top Gear?
No.
Scott Howe loves Travis. There you go.
You've got to appeal to that audience. Can you know what I mean? For it to have that like crossover, you've got to get Wonderwall on Gavin and Stacey or something like that. Can you know what I mean? That's when you hear that sort of rubbish. Yeah,
Patrick, by the way, I'm not dismissing what you're saying there, Kev, but I think it is a sign of the times. And by this point, they're coming out a red telephone box to get on stage, and it's all a bit circus-like, you know what I mean? Just to quote the first track on the album. But Don't Go Away, as a standalone song, listening back to it, and Stand By Me are up there. They're up there. They weren't as big as Wonderwall and Don't Look Back in Anger. They're not as revered, but as songs, as crafted songs, I think they're superb.
Both of them are better than Wonderwall for me, hands down.
Even Ryan Adams' version.
Even though I never heard it, I'm sure it's 10 times better than the Oasis version of Wonderwall.
Check it out, mate. Check it out. You should. I think you would like it. Patrick Harold, Manic Street Preachers were absolutely class. Don't disagree with that at all. I wouldn't mind covering some of their albums as well. The Manics were class. Absolutely. I loved the political edge that they brought to the party as well. All Around the World then comes in. Kev, we spoke about this last night. It got to number 1. It was written in 1992. There's footage of them playing it in the boardwalk, in the rehearsal rooms, which they shared with Sister Lovers, with Debbie, all that kind of stuff. And the B-sides were The Fame, Flashbacks with an X. Don't know if I like that. X. No. In the flashbacks, you know. It was like Phones for You, and then every single shop that did their take on that, Pets for You. Just spell it out with an F, an O, and an R. You know, spell it right. That annoyed me about that song. And Street Fighting Man was their Stones cover as well. 9 minutes 20. I'm not going to slag off the time in it. And you look at the video, watching back on the video, it's kind of like part Monty Python, part Sgt. Pepper's. And fairly recently, I say that, it was maybe a couple of years ago, these things happen on social media. Liam had the megaphone that he's holding in the video, and he had it in his back garden. I think he put it on his head or something. But I still love it. I still love All Around the World. I know it's big and it's long and all that. Should it maybe have been the last song on the album, though, if I'm going to critique anything?
You could, but I understand why they done it. why the way that they've done it. All Around the World. I ken Noel and Liam will be watching this, and then they'll be taking our take on their album with like bated breath and stuff like that. So, because they're listening, when or if they reform, I'm only coming to see you if you open with All Around the World. Reason being, you and JP were talking about the Be Here Now tour that he went to Newcastle.
Uh-huh.
I went to Glasgow, the SEC. Mm-hmm. I got a ticket for the SEC the day of the gig, and me and my pal called Barry McIntyre, who's 50 today, happy birthday Barry, went to that gig. And the gig never finished because somebody threw a vodka bottle at Bonehead. And I never had the pleasure of hearing Oasis do All Around the World.
But
so if
you're demanding that they play it,
I'm demanding they do it.
But does it have to be song 1? I don't know if it's an opener, mate. Is it an opener? I think they come on and it needs to be something that gets the crowd going. It needs to be like Aqueous Rock and Roll Star. Fucking in the bushes.
Rock and Roll Star, because that's what they'll actually do. But if All Around the World's known the set, they're not getting marked on £14 or whatever it's going to be.
By the way, CJ, I never saw this in the list, but YouTube Pop is decent. I loved that Staring at the Sun song. I thought that was brilliant. That's what it was called, right? Staring at the Sun. And the B-sides were good as well. I am a U2 fan for my sins. First band ever seen live. Interestingly enough, don't know if it's an age thing, Kev. I've been going back listening to U2 a lot recently. Don't know if that's a worry. If I am going to start watching Top Gear and bootcut jeans, I don't know. But I have been listening to U2 recently, and of course Oasis toured with them or supported them in an American tour. Alan Woods asks the question, I better write this down, are you going to ask Alan McGee about his famous quote about all the cool people in music support Celtic while Rangers have me and wet, wet, wet? I think I'm going to have to, aye. We're in Glasgow, I'm pretty sure it'll go down a storm. Didn't mention wet, wet, wet on Acsom though, because obviously they're never going to be viewed the same thanks to Kevin and Paddy a couple of Wednesdays ago. And we're not going to let them forget it. And then it's getting better, man, right? And again, I think like Be Here Now, it's up. It's a kind of like, for me, it's a song that you would want to hear live. It was one of the songs that teased in that TV special the night before. And I just think it's a really strong finish. Those three songs are a strong end to this album. And obviously they finished the album with a bit of strength, as Celtic did by winning the league this season. But I'm all over it. I love it.
I think All Around the World's a bit like Magic Pie for me, because it was that ludicrous it shouldn't have worked. It should never have worked, and it does. It's absolutely a great psychedelic pop number. Then what's the next song?
It's Getting Better, Man.
It's Getting Better, Man is the song My Big Mouth Thinks It Is. So, like, I think My Big Mouth wants to be getting better, man. And it just completely doesn't get there, eh? It's another fantastic Oasis tune. It is. It's just this album is chock full of really, really blinding Oasis. What Oasis sounded like live. This is the building blocks, the foundations of Oasis in this album, and a lot of people. And it's also quite an upbeat album, because the pace never drops, and it's only some of the B-sides that you've mentioned where the pace actually drops. And I think that's the reason that a lot of the B-sides are not on the albums. A lot of the acoustics, because I think because it's about maintaining that energy throughout the album. I get that. And totally. I mean, where Morning Glory sort of goes up and down, and there is more acoustic stuff in it. This is just like a full blown. I'm going Spinal Tap. I'm going up to 11 here, and I'm not going to let it go. And songs like Flashback, Angel Child. What was the other one? The other acoustic one that he does? Was it on All Around the World? I'll just bring this one up for you, mate, just so that you can go away happy after the show. Stevie Kenny, well done on picking Mikey Johnson for Ireland. That's all I'm going to say to your comment, mate. No offence taken. The emojis always help. Big thumbs up. Anytime I walk past the Grange with Celtic Supporters Club, Stevie Kenny's the Grange with Celtic Supporters Club bus in the bus park on a Saturday, Stevie never comes out and says that to my face. I can see a wee toe coming up here, boys. There we go. Stevie, come on the show, do a Screamacelica with us. There you go. Visit Kev. Aye, let's do it. Ernest mentions Kneecap. This is a band that I became aware of through Colin Watt, because he interviewed the band's manager. And by the way, it must have been 2.5, 3 years ago. And there's a fantastic video actually, started doing the rounds on social media. It was an interview with Joe, the channel Joe. So Ernest is going to go and see the band in the Barras in May, and I'm sure it'll be a cracking night as I saw a documentary about them, and I was just like, I don't know if I like that, but I'm really interested in going to see it. It's that sort of like, I'm like, oh, that's sounds attracted me to that. But I don't know if I'll love it. But there's something going. I would be really interested to go and see that live. I wouldn't buy any of the records, but I'd be really interested to go and see it as a live spectacle. I'd like to see it be energetic and great.
I want to go and see the toe-to-toe between you and Stevie Kenny live. So let me know when that's going to happen in the Grangemouth Bus Park or wherever that happens. Or the
Stevie
Rap Walk,
Kenny just says he patches me. He sees me all the time and he patches me. He just says that.
He doesn't want to hear he doesn't want to hear, because you're a musical tube, he doesn't want to hear your opinion, Kev. That's fair enough.
That's fine. That's fine.
Listen, Scott Howe, Eagle Eye Cherry was Nina Cherry's brother. Yeah, he was. Nina Cherry's song, what was it? Buffalo Stance. That was what it was called. The brilliant lyric, State of Mind. Have a listen to it. Superb. That's no way we got the name of the channel.
Anytime Eagle Eye Cherry comes up, I always remember the Mark and Lard joke when they called him Bog Eye Cherry. They used to call him Bog Eye Cherry. Here's the song by Bog Eye Cherry. Why? I used to find it funny.
Finlay Quay was a Hibs boy. I actually thanks Hibernian in that particular album, Maverick a Strike, and Irvin Welsh as well. But I think his career kind of went down the tubes, unfortunately. There is a reprise at the end of this album. I don't know if there's a need for it, but there is a reprise. It's all around the world. But the reason I mentioned it is you can hear footsteps in the corridor. Do you know whose footsteps they are?
No.
Well, for years, I thought it was the manager. I thought it was the manager of the band. Was it Marcus Russell?
Mm-hmm.
He was the Welsh guy that managed Oasis. But I was told today it's actually Brian Cannon. Brian Cannon, who designed the front covers of the album. It's his footsteps you can hear walking. I'm just looking for more Stevie Kenny abuse. I want to bring it up. Here we go. Look at that. The Maniacs are pure Welsh Republicans. You know, I know you corrected yourself, mate, but listen, there we go. Right. Kev, drop 2 album tracks for 2 B-sides on this album.
It's very difficult because the B-sides I absolutely love are acoustic no ones. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult to see where they would fit in the album. But to be simplistic, I would drop the reprise at the end and bring in Going Nowhere, because that would have just took it down gently. Going Nowhere on a Train, that would have just took it down right gently. And this is a push. I'll put Flashback in instead of My Big Mouth. But again, I don't think it would work because of the way that the album goes. I think it's easier to chuck songs in for the master plan and B-sides into What's the Story of Morning Glory than what it is this one. This one works as a body, whereas I don't think What's the Story of Morning Glory works as an absolute album. Okay.
Well, I'm going to try and drop a song and replace it, not with a similar song, but a song maybe of the similar kind of tempo, right? So, for example, I've already said I don't like Magic Pie. I would get rid of that in a heartbeat, but I would replace Magic Pie with Going Nowhere. That's what I would do.
I could see why, but I think you would need to re-record it.
Re-record Going Nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would drop The Girl in the Dirty Shirt. Does nothing at all for me, and I would replace that with Stay Young. And I just think it would be a better album as a result of that. Fading Out, obviously, we've already decided that's going to be completely re-recorded and remixed and reworked, so that stays in. Your best lyric, Kev?
What would be interesting, though, would be if Noel reworked it the same that he done with Do You Know What I Mean, right? Then a lot of the B-sides would fit. A lot of the B-sides would actually then slot into that album, no problem.
Yeah.
Then you could take out songs and you go, oh, wait a minute. I mean, there's a song on the remastered one called We Are Shadows, I Am Shadow. It was on the deluxe version. That's absolutely fantastic. Absolutely brilliant song. And that untitled demo as well. They two would sit on that album if no reworked the whole thing. But as I think is a body of work, it's very difficult to take anything out of Be Here Now. It's like a big, massive status quo Jenga.
A status quo Jenga. Love it. Right, have you figured out what this lyric is from the song? Right, hit me with it.
Sitting upside a high chair with the devil's refugee is going to be blinded by the lights that follow me. Pure Marquis Smith.
All right, I like it. I'm going to do something a wee bit more obvious. I'm going to go for Do You Know What I Mean? Coming in a Mess, Going Out in Style, because I think that there was a moment where you know, that typified what Oasis were, wasn't it? You know, coming in a mess, wearing their baggy next gear, and by this stage they are prancing about with furry jackets and all that on, dating models and Patsy Kensit and all this kind of stuff. Right. Jukebox, you're on the Acsom Jukebox, you've got a quid, you can choose 3 songs for this album, Kev. What are the 3 songs?
What are the 3 songs? I want Money's Worth for My Pound. Do you know what I mean? Magic Pie and All Around the World.
I can't believe you picked Magic Pie. Like, I'm going to go Stand By Me, Don't Go Away, It's Getting Better, man. There's my quid.
There you go.
Celtic went on, as we all know, to stop the 10. Vim Janssen was victorious. We beat St Johnstone 2-1 at Celtic Park after faltering at East End the week before, when it was a 1-1 draw after Craig Falconbridge scored an equaliser to stop the party.
End that day.
Oh, it was busy game. Beautifully sunny day as well that day.
It was,
I remember. Yeah. So we did win the league. We smelled the glove, and Oasis disappeared for a few years, came back as a completely different band in the 2000s. We will be doing this again, but the reason it prompted us this week is that I will be on stage, and it would be great if Stevie Kenny could come along and help me with my questions, because obviously I didn't know anything about music, but I will try my best, Stevie. But I'm on stage tomorrow night with Alan McGee, who has worked with quite a few big bands in my lifetime anyway, from, you know, the Jesus and Mary chain to My Bloody Valentine, Primal Scream, Oasis, Teenage Fan Club, Ride, Super Furry Animals, and there's more and more and more. And I'll be asking him some questions tomorrow night. I think there's maybe something like 18 or 19 tickets available. If you want to come along, the ticket link is under the video. And it's at Barra's Art and Design in Glasgow. Really looking forward to it and hear what McGee has got to say about all the cool cats supporting Celtic. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. Give us a wee thumbs up. Even you, Stevie, give us a thumbs up. Help us to learn more about music and come back on the show again. Hopefully we'll come back with Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. Not my favourite, but we're going to cover it. All that's left for me to say is thank you once again, Kevin Graham, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers, lads.